Captain Midnight.
So I started talking about movies on this channel in 2017, and while Marvel has had its fair share of issues, it's also had a sense of stability, even if that can sometimes lead to diminishing returns. DC though? DC has swung all over the place, from the highs of the Batman to the lows of The Flash or Joker 2. I have my reservations about James Gunn's Superman, but overall I do like it, mostly thanks to a rock-solid performance at its center. It wasn't a mega hit, but its numbers were good enough that it seemed to provide this new take on DC something to build a foundation on. But a lot has changed in a year, and now its spin-off Supergirl is releasing into much choppier waters. It's not just that the movie isn't that great. I didn't hate it. I think there's some good elements here, but the box office projections are a lot lower than expected. And importantly for Gunn, there's a potential sale of Warner Brothers to Paramount looming over everything he does now, which makes his long-term future at DC seem a lot more precarious than it used to. We know the Superman sequel Man of Tomorrow is on the horizon, and if Supergirl truly crashes and burns in theaters, the more pressure it puts on that movie to not just match the returns of the first Superman, but to wildly exceed them. So that's what I want to talk about this week: the future of the DCU, James Gunn, and if the weaknesses of this movie show us some of the issues that come with him being the driving creative force behind the cinematic universe. So I'll be honest, I am kind of surprised by just how much general audiences don't seem to be on board with Supergirl at all. I don't just mean the low box office numbers. The trailers weren't great, so that doesn't shock me too much. I more mean the reaction from audiences who have seen it. CinemaScore, the company that polls random people coming out of the theater, has it at a B-, and the Rotten Tomatoes audience score is 75%. Now that probably doesn't sound so bad. If you got either one of those on a test score, it wouldn't be the end of the world. In context though, it's pretty bleak. To put that into perspective, as I'm making this video, it's lower on both metrics than The Flash and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Hell, CinemaScore has Wonder Woman 1984 higher, and that might be the single worst superhero movie I've talked about on this channel. That is a much, much worse movie than Supergirl. You know, it's still got Joker 2 beat, so at least there's that. I don't bring these up because I think audiences' scores are the end-all be-all of a movie's quality. I definitely don't. But I do think they show us that this movie is just not resonating with a mass audience in a way that DC probably didn't see coming. So what are the issues here? I think the two biggest problems may be the look of the film and the villain. There's a quote from James Hibbard at The Hollywood Reporter going around that sums this up really nicely. Moviegoers increasingly despise murky, dark visuals, often used to hide weak effects. Along with obvious CGI and incoherent action, they've seen it so many times they've become allergic. If there's one piece of unsolicited advice I can give to studio executives greenlighting action films, it's this: if you cannot afford or don't have the time or talent available to make your film's sets and action look as realistic and amazing as possible, then rewrite your script. Murky is about as accurate a description of the visuals of Supergirl as you can find, and I think that turned people off right away. Then there's that villain, Krim. Supergirl is based on one of the character's best received comics of the last 10 years, Woman of Tomorrow, which was inspired by the amazing Charles Portis novel True Grit, and the filmmakers have talked about True Grit on the press tour quite a bit. It's easy to see the comparisons here. A very earnest young girl out for revenge, a deeply flawed alcoholic mentor figure who has lost any sense of purpose. It's all there. I guess that makes Lobo like LaBeef, but there's a key difference. When they finally find Maddie's father's killer, Tom Chaney, he's a really pathetic figure. He's not a cunning outlaw or really a character that's notable for anything except being a dumb, violent man with an easily bruised ego. And that works so well in that story. It helps make clear why Maddie's quest for revenge won't be able to fulfill her. Supergirl has this a bit too. Krim is a vicious but deeply boring guy. But he's also, a supervillain running a massive and horrific trafficking operation. He's both far too big and consequential of a villain to fulfill that Tom Chaney role, and way too boring to be compelling as the bad guy of a superhero movie in his own right. He's unpleasant, uninteresting, and doing something so dark that the movie just doesn't really feel equipped to handle it tonally. Obviously, Supergirl is not directed by James Gunn, but it's clear the film wants to maintain the style of movie that he's known for. And it's not one that really meshes well with any of the other things they're doing. As an adaptation of the comic, or a more truly Western-inspired riff on True Grit, it tries to blend all of this together, and it doesn't really hit the mark on either of them. So, where does this all put the James Gunn DCU? I'll get to the industry stuff in a minute, but I think creatively, it tells us a few things. First, and maybe most importantly, Supergirl feels too much like a Gunn movie. I'm not bashing the guy, I've enjoyed most of his films. But if the DCU is going to be an actual ongoing project, they're going to need a lot more tonal variety than that. Guardians of the Galaxy is already one of the most influential blockbusters of the last 15 years, with plenty of bad wannabe imitators. If a DC movie isn't up to the high standards set by that trilogy, they're gonna blend into the muck of all the other wide releases that have already tried to ape its style. I also don't know if trying to hit that same tone is great when you're setting out to build a universe. Many of these Gunn-like movies do a lot of genre shorthand storytelling that relies on our memories of similar movies to kind of get the gist of its setting. A good example is how much Supergirl draws from the Star Wars cantina scene. She walks into a bar that's very similar, and you're like, okay, sure, I get what you're going for here. But it ends up feeling like an uninspired photocopy of the original, because you've seen it so many times before, and because the scenes rarely make an effort to be as strange and unique as its inspiration. Like they're just having someone sing a song in English. It's quick, easy, and makes the setting feel like an afterthought. Now, relying on this sort of thing so much can work from time to time, especially when you at least have something new to bring to the table. And if your goal is to keep people engaged with the DCU as a whole, I don't think it's a good idea. To be fair, Superman, for as overstuffed as it could feel at times, didn't really have this issue nearly as much. Like, it seems very possible to turn this around, and not let screenplays like Supergirl's go out the door. Now, it's on the business end where things may get a lot harder for Gunn and company. In 2025, Warner Brothers seemed pretty happy with the positive reception to Superman, but it's not 2025, and the Paramount purchase is looking like it could become a reality. This changes everything, even if everyone involved will pretend for now that that's not the case. If Supergirl really is a notable flop, the pressure will absolutely be on Man of Tomorrow to be a bona fide, no asterisks hit. If that's the case, the DCU will probably be left alone to do its own thing. But anything less than that, maybe even a Superman 1 level performance, and I think they may be in trouble. Unless something is an unqualified success, new regimes in Hollywood rarely like to keep the old guard's higher-ups around. We're talking about a very vain industry with outsized egos. If the DCU goes on to really succeed, then Paramount inherited something that worked. But if it looks like it's floundering, I think the temptation will be there to knock it all over and start from scratch yet again. Because if that works out, then the new guys look like geniuses who have more than justified their massive salaries. I don't want to be alarmist or make it sound like I think this is right around the corner, but I do think it's a definite possibility. If you look at the history of movie studios, you're not going to find a lot of new bosses who are super loyal to the management of the previous owners and completely buy into their creative vision. James Gunn is not Paramount's guy. They didn't put him there, and I think they'll give him a lot less leeway than the previous bosses would have. The good news for Gunn is that the deal is very far from final at this stage, and a purchase of this size is not going to sail through easily, or at least I don't think it will. So he still has time to prove that his DCU can be the mega hit franchise that the owners of Superman and Batman will always expect it to be. So while Supergirl may end up being a pretty big failure for Warner, I don't think it spells the end of anything. But Man of Tomorrow needs to be a hit. Lanterns being well received would help, and it would be great if the lower budgeted movie Clayface, which I'm actually really excited for, proves that the DCU can go in an interesting direction far from the usual tone and style of James Gunn, and still strike a chord with people. I think that's all very possible, but movies like Supergirl, which unfortunately felt a little stale right out of the gate, just aren't gonna cut it. James Gunn has a tough job. It's incredibly rare to find a creative who is also capable of running a massive production empire. That's why my latest episode of Showrunners is on Grey's Anatomy and Bridgerton producer Shonda Rhimes. A major force in TV, she went from writing a panned Britney Spears movie to being the biggest production powerhouse in television. I think it's a fascinating story and one worth exploring. There's also an episode on Rod Serling, the creator of The Twilight Zone, and Vince Gilligan, creator of Breaking Bad, with every installment of Showrunners diving into the people behind some of the most influential series in TV history. If you haven't seen it yet, now's the perfect time to start. You can watch Showrunners right now exclusively on Nebula, where it lives alongside exclusive videos from creators like Lindsay Ellis, Nando V Movies, and other shows like CinemaStix's Let's Rewind. There's over 200 creators on Nebula now, and it's only growing. You'll also get all my regular videos on there ad-free. You can get 50% off an annual membership, just $30 for the whole year or $250 a month. Head to go.nebula.tv/captainmidnight, use the QR code on screen, or click the link below to watch the Shonda Rhimes episode right now.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.